everybody. Welcome to Movement this morning. Go ahead and stand and sing with us. I give you glory for all you brought me through. And now I'm ready for whatever you want to do. I'm moving forward to follow after you. And now I'm ready for whatever you want to do. Your presence is an open door. We want you, Lord, like never before. Your presence is an open door. So come now, Lord, like never before. In every season, your grace has been enough. And I'm believing that the best is yet to come. The cross before me, my hope on things above. And in you, Jesus, the best is yet to come. Your presence is an open door. We want you, Lord, like never before. Your presence is an open door. So come now, Lord, like never before. Here we go. I know breakthrough is coming. By faith, I see a miracle. My God made me a promise and it won't stop now. I know breakthrough is coming. By faith, I see a miracle. My God made me a promise and it won't stop now. Sing it again. I know breakthrough is coming. By faith, I see a miracle. My God made me a promise and he won't stop now. Your presence is an open door. We want you, Lord, like never before. Your presence is an open door. So come now, Lord, like never before. Let the King of my heart be the mountain where I run, the fountain I drink from. Oh, he is my song. Let the King of my heart be the shadow where I hide, the ransom for my life. Oh, he is my song. 'Cause you are good, you're good. Oh, 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 let the King of my heart be the wind inside my sails, the anchor in the good. Oh, you are good, so good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh. Take this time to look around you, say hello to anyone around you, whether you know them or not.
You can go ahead and have a seat. It's so good to be celebrating with you this morning. My name is Ellen. I'll be your host today, just walking you through our time together. And I don't know what your weekend has looked like. I think for me and my husband, our weekend has looked like quintessential fall. Like we've finally gotten into that season where the weather is feeling like fall weather, and we've just been able to spend time with people, being present with the people around us. We yesterday got to spend time with friends who have boys who play upward football. So we spent the morning watching some little kids play football, which was a lot of fun. If you can picture, 5 and 6 year olds trying to grasp the game of football. But I don't know if the weekend has been busy for you maybe, or maybe it has been restful, but however you're coming into this morning, we're glad that you're here to celebrate with us as we celebrate who God is and what He's doing. And if you're new here, I'd love for you to take a moment to fill out what we call a Connect card. There's one of these in the seat back pocket in front of you, or there's the QR code that you can scan as well to fill one out on your phone if that's easier for you. But it just gives us some contact information so that we can help get you plugged into this community, help you find people to walk alongside of you as you follow God. We know just how important that is. So if you have not filled out one of these, make sure to do so. And there's a drop box in the back here and one out in the lobby that you can put those in as you leave. But also, if this is your first time filling one of those out, we're going to donate $5 on your behalf to one of our partner organizations, which is Lifeline Christian Mission. They are doing really significant work just to provide for needs across the globe, whether it is needs when it comes to food or even just planting churches around the world so that people can come to know God. So you get to be part of supporting their mission by just filling out this card. So make sure that you do that. And also, one of the other things that we always spend time on when we're here together celebrating on a Sunday is that we take time to pause and to give time for generosity. And, we've been in this message series for the past couple of weeks all about eliminating hurry from our lives. And I think one of the ways that we can really take a step in that is to slow down and to choose to be generous with all that we have. And I think when it comes to our finances, when we slow down enough to say, God, I'm giving back out of what you've already provided for me. That is one way that we get to live out this slower pace. And it's a way of saying that we trust God with what we have and saying that we trust that He can do more with less. So that's something that you're invited into this morning. You can use the envelope in front of you or that QR code to give online if that is an easier option for you. And again, those drop boxes are in the back and out in the lobby for the envelope if you want to use that. But I mentioned that we're in this message series, so at this time, we'll just jump into our message for this morning.
All right. Well, hey, how's everyone doing? Good. Hey, even that music is calming, right? I love it. Hey, as we before we step into the teaching today and we attack or tackle this idea of hurry, I just wanted to take a minute and, I think so often what happens in our life, even in the church, but even just in our lives as we get going at such a pace, that we just don't take a minute to slow down and reflect and even look into what's going on in the world around us. And I think most of us are aware of just a lot of the devastation that happened this week because of Hurricane Ian, both in Florida, but also beyond just the U.S. There's global impact as well. And have had some people say, hey, what does movement do for stuff like that? And do we have a plan? And how do we engage in that? And so I just want to walk you through a little bit of where we are with that, how we approach events like this, and invite you into the journey with us. First and foremost, I would just say this: so much of what it means to allow God to use and lead and move in your life is just to slow down and invite him in and make space for him to speak. And so when it comes to times like this, our stillness and our ability to be present with God really has an impact on what he might say to us in it. And so it starts with prayer, and it starts with just really listening, but also asking God to intervene and move within the brokenness of our world and the hurt and the pain and all of that. And so it really starts there. But honestly, as a church, what I really believe our call is as a, I think the church is, people, God's people living out his mission. And I think us as a community as a whole, one of the things that I've always felt really strong about is that our role as a overall church is to equip each other and to provide opportunities for you to live out God's calling in your life, to look for ways to support you in that and for you to support me in that. And so what does all that mean? It means this. We're currently looking and connected with organizations that are going to have opportunities for you and I to give financially. But I also want you to pray. I think it's a time, as Ellen talked about generosity, it's time, talents, treasure, right? It's all of that stuff. And so it's really just praying, God, is there something more you have for me in this? Do you want to use me in some specific way? Gifts, talents that I have, resources that I have that you would call me to be a part of, just being a part of restoration in this instance. And so what that isn't is what that's not is it's not an out. What it is it's an invitation for you and for me to really begin to pray over, God, what would you have me do? And then for us as a church to rally around that. And so what that means in the coming weeks, you're going to hear this isn't a 1 week deal, right? This is a longer process. In the coming weeks, you're going to hear of opportunities to give financially. Even as soon as this week, we have some partners that we're going to work with in that you'll see some opportunities to do that. I just want you to pray, God, what's my role in this? But even more than that, be in tune with that on the regular. There are needs in our, there are people that are homeless and displaced within our community here in Findlay and throughout the U.S. and for that matter throughout the world. And so this is a bigger teaching moment to really say, God, what is it that you want to do in my life? So just want to invite you to pray over that. We'll provide ways, and then honestly, we want to support you in that. If you feel like God's calling you to take a step of action, we would love to help align you with the resources to do that, and even invite others into that with you. And we're just going to trust that as we seek God, he's going to provide opportunities. Lifeline, one of our partners, if that we're actually supporting through our Connect cards this month, they're really good at getting teams together to go tackle stuff like this. In fact, they're currently sending teams down to eastern Kentucky where all the flooding and stuff happened a few weeks back now, or honestly a couple months. And so it's a long process, but we're going to invite you into that. But the first and foremost, we're called as followers of Jesus to respond. And more than anything, we're called to seek him, to ask God to move and say, God, what are you saying to me? What am I going to do about it? And so let's just pause for a minute. Let's just pray over that. Like I said, you'll hear more. We do feel like God has a role for us in that. we'll invite you into that as well. But more than anything, let's just pray, ask God to move, and pray for people that have been impacted. Some of you in here have family and friends or other connections that are moved well beyond just, oh, this is something that happened hundreds of miles away. And some of you in here have connections, like I said, that go far beyond that. So let's pray. God, just want to pause. I want to slow down and just make space for you to speak into our lives. And God, I'll confess in my life, sometimes there's so much going on in my world that I lose sight of the world. And God, here's what I know. There's brokenness and there's need because of Hurricane Ian, and just people have lost loved ones. They've lost all their belongings. They've lost everything that they probably held dear. And right now they need hope in real ways. They need hope that can only be found in your son Jesus, but they need hope in tangible ways too by your people. And so God, just help us to see ways to serve and love. Help us to move beyond just thinking and really move to be people of action. And God, your story in our lives is a story of restoration. It's a story of redeeming brokenness and broken things and making them whole. And there's a whole lot of people that are feeling pretty broken right now. And so, God, my prayer is that your church would lead the way, not your church and movement, but your church, your people all over the world. And God, that we would understand you have a part for us as well. God, I thank you that you invite us into something bigger than ourselves, and that you invite us into being a part of this mission, that it's not just religion. It's a life-changing mission that you've invited us into. And so, God, would you use us in any way that you can to help people see the love of Jesus and the hope that is found in him. And pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Well, I think I know for you, because I know for me, and from talking with other people over the last couple of weeks, this series has been pretty challenging, pretty, I don't know. It's been really, really good for me. And at the same time, it's caused me to sit back and go, okay, like this isn't just something I'm teaching. This is something I'm trying to navigate through, God. So help me to understand how to eliminate hurry from my life. And I love this word ruthlessly, right? It means the intensity level of how we should be attacking this idea of hurry and what it does to our lives is not something just to look at and go, I might need to remove something from my life, or I need to make a little more space. But rather we recognize like hurry is the great enemy of us walking with God in a way that he's created us to walk with him in. And so we're going on this journey together. And, here's what we hear every day from people all around us, from many of which are, disconnected from God. But honestly, even let's be honest, even good, well-intended people that would say, I believe in Jesus and I want, I want God's best in my life. We hear this over and over and over again, and that is add more, go faster, right? Just add more, go faster, add more, go faster. And we've felt the effects of that, which is, oftentimes we're exhausted, overextended, just weary, worn out, broken down. And so maybe like me, you've found yourself at a place, and I'm coming from a place of complete transparency here. I've found myself saying, there's got to be something better than this, right? There's got to be a better way than just running around trying to move from one thing to the other. There's got to be, and the answer is yes, there is. And what we've said in this series is the answer is found in really understanding and looking at the ways of Jesus. And when I say the ways of Jesus, I think it's easy to look at what the Bible says and live out some commands or live out some teachings that maybe Jesus taught. But the question is, or not even question, it doesn't stop with just, doing what Jesus taught. It's living how Jesus lived. And Jesus lived his life in a completely different way than most of us understand how to live. And he just lived this slower, more intentional life. And he invites us into that. In fact, there's a passage in the book of Matthew and that we've looked at throughout this series. And in it, he offers us this picture of what this better way could look like for you and for me. And I love how there's a translation of the Bible called The Message, which is really a paraphrase, all right? And so they take the original language and the author and some editors, what they do is that they take the original language and then they kind of say, okay, let's paraphrase, let's summarize what Jesus or what the scriptures are saying here. In this case, what Jesus is saying. And I love how they translate Matthew chapter 11, and we've read it before in this series, but let me read it to you one more time. Matthew 11, starting with verse 28, this is Jesus speaking, and he says, "Are you tired? Check. Worn out? Yep. Burnout on religion, in other words, burn on just trying to, go through the routines and the rituals." Jesus says, "Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life." And I think for many of us, this idea of recovering our life sounds really good about right now. "I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me." And then I love this line, "Watch how I do it." Like, don't just listen to me, but watch how I do it. "Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Just keep company with me and you'll learn to live freely and lightly." And as I think about hurry and the impacts that it's had on our lives, my life specifically, but I believe it to be true about you, as I think about hurry, it's like the opposite of freely and lightly, right? Like for some of us, maybe you feel just enslaved to your schedule and everything that's going on. For many of you, maybe you carry the burden of, I've got to be 6 places at one time. I don't know how to do that. And so it's just heavy. And it's, you just feel enslaved to this. And Jesus says, hey, if you learn to walk as I did, as you learn to really live life with me leading, I'm going to show you a better way that's free and it's light. And some of you are like, yeah, it sounds great. And it's found in these 2 words, slow down, right? Slow down. Jesus is simply saying this, slow down and let me lead. Slow down and let me show you a better way. Let me show you a way that honestly is better and it's freer and it's really what I have for you. Okay, so with all that being said, let's kind of get into where I want to go today. And in order to do that, I just want to ask, how many of you have heard of a guy by the name of Mr. Beast? Anyone? Like 8? Yeah, all right. Some of you are raising your hand. No, that's not me. That's not my nickname. All right. So anyways, Mr. Beast is a YouTuber. Some of you are like, what's a YouTuber? Someone that makes a lot of money doing not a whole lot of, whatever. So anyways, Mr. Beast is a YouTuber, and check this out. He has 104 million subscribers, all right? 104 million people subscribe to his channel. That's like, almost a third of the U.S. population. And you think about, kids, little ones, and you think of people like over 80, they're probably not watching YouTube. So like, honestly, all of you, most of us in here probably should if we aren't watching Mr. Beast. Okay, anyways, that's not the point. Okay, so the point is this. Mr. Beast is a really cool dude who does some really awesome things, and that's why people watch him. In fact, like he does like some crazy generous things. For instance, goes to a restaurant, orders breakfast, and leaves a $10,000 tip. He can do that because he has 104 million subscribers on YouTube. But anyways, or there's this one time where he took a briefcase with money and he had people hold on to it, and like whoever stayed connected to the briefcase the longest got to keep the $1 million. True, that really, that's real stuff that he does. And my favorite thing of what he does that I was, someone kind of showed me one time is he likes to draw this like red circle at a store and then find someone at the store and say, hey, whatever you can fit inside of this over the next 10 minutes, I'm going to buy for you. All right. And so he that's like the rule. As long as it doesn't touch the line, you get to keep it. I'm going to buy it for you. And so it's amazing to watch as people, as it's amazing to watch as people try to figure out, like, what do I put in here? One person put a whole bunch of gift cards. Like, that's ingenious, right? I mean, think about that, because you can fit a lot of those in a little area. At Best Buy, people are putting video game systems and all kinds of stuff. Here's the thing. Like, no one's putting. Sorry, that's the allergy speaking. No one's putting, king-size candy bars in there, right? Like, that's just not what you're filling the space with. You're going to find things that are most valuable, like things that have extreme value. Now, I say that because I want you to hold on to that as we walk through what we're going to talk about today, because today's all about what we value. And as I think about what we value in our lives, here's what I know. It has a major, major impact on the level of hurry and busyness in our life. I mean, it plays like the things that we value or what we value is very, very significant when it comes to this idea of hurry. And the truth is that our lives are a lot like this red circle on this screen, and that is we have a limited space. Maybe that's a limited amount of time, a limited amount of capacity. We have a limited amount of space, and we have this circle that's been drawn. And the question is, what are you going to fit inside the circle, right? What's going to fill or occupy that circle? And that's something that all of us have to figure out, and we get help with this, right? Because what culture would tell us is just cram more stuff, more inside of the circle. So much so that I read a stat that the average adult in America has 4,000, sorry, let me get this right, 4,000 ads targeted at them every single day. Every single day, there are 4,000 voices trying to speak into your life. Now, that's a lot. Some of you are like, okay, that's not that much, but like that's an average, right? Because some people like are on social media all day, and so there's a lot. It's kind of scary, right? You've been there, and maybe if you're on social media, if you're not, stay off, please. But anyways, a while back, I was having a conversation, and I told a friend, I said, man, I really need a vacation. And I opened Facebook like 15 minutes later, and like the Marriott's trying to get me to buy a timeshare, right? Like, this is real. And so then you're like, oh man, they're listening to my conversation. So now you're in that like moment, do I like throw my phone into the river? Are people tracking me or what's going on? But I think about like all the advertising and all the people that are trying to tell you what to cram into your circle. And the more and more stuff that we try to fit into our circle, here's what we know. The more and more busy we become, and the more and more exhausted we become, and the more extended we become, right? Like, we're just at this place where I've had all I can stand. I can't add any more into my life. And you sit there and you go, okay, seriously, like, there's got to be a better way, right? Okay, so let's pause for a minute because I want to walk us back to something I said today, but also what we talked about at the beginning of this series, and that is this idea that there is a better way, and it's found in the ways of Jesus. What in the world does that mean? Like, what does that mean? And here's what I think I want us to understand about that today is what's found in the ways of Jesus is a different way to live than what you and I are told by culture of the world. In other words, when Jesus came to this world, Jesus came, and the Gospels talk about this idea that the kingdom of heaven is here. In other words, when Jesus came into this world, he brought with him this new kingdom or this new way of living. And this new kingdom operates differently than how we typically understand the world to work. It's a different way of living, and there's a different ruler or different voice that we're following, and that king in this new kingdom is Jesus, and he offers us a different way to go about living. And what we need to understand about this, I mean, this is big stuff, is that quite often the life that Jesus is going to point us towards looks drastically different than the life that the world would point us towards. And the question is, we have to choose, right? Like, we have to choose, like, who are we going to follow and which direction are we going to go? And we'll talk more about that in a minute. And maybe you're here and you're just searching, you're like, I don't know about, that kings and kingdoms and that all, that's pretty, I don't know, it's out there. Hey, like, I just want you to hear this. Like, we recognize there's, like, we all have this choice, like, how we got to live our life. And what I just want you to hear is our prayer for you is that this is a safe place to search and ask questions and explore. But if you're here, what I also want you to hear is that we really believe that following the ways of Jesus, like aligning your life with his kingdom, we really believe is truly, like, that is the best way to live. So much so in John chapter 10, Jesus says, I've come that you may have life and have it to the full or more abundantly. In other words, like Jesus says, like, I'm bringing about this new life that is better and it's true and it's what God has for you. And Paul, who writes a lot in the New Testament, I love the way he describes this life in 1 Timothy, and he's talking about, like, how we should live, and he says this, he says, and that you may take a hold of the life that is truly life. All right, so what he's saying is, like, this is truly the life that God has for you. And I just want to address, like, there are these two ways, and we have to understand that because like, so often I think we don't recognize that, like, there's this battle going on, and that's the tension that many of us face. And we just have to navigate through, like, understanding, is this something that the world is pointing me to, or is this something that Jesus and his kingdom are pointing me towards? And then we've got to, align ourselves accordingly. And what happens, here's what I want to do. I want to walk through with you two beliefs, okay? There's two beliefs that I think the world would throw at us, and neither of these are going to be earth-shattering when I say them. But perhaps we've never thought of them from a pace of life standpoint. We've thought of them in different ways, but maybe not from a pace of life. And I believe these two beliefs are really what has caused our lives to be out of control from a pace standpoint. So I want to look at those, and I want to look at a different way that Jesus has to offer, what he would say, this is what I want your life to look like. And then finally, I want to really, really, in a hurry, run through, in a hurry, I want to run through just a couple ways that you can live this out. Now, here's why these beliefs are so significant that the world throws at us, is these beliefs start as a seed, right? And the seed gets planted and something grows, and the fruit that's produced, so like the fruit that comes from that is hurry. And so let's just go through these. Here's the first belief that we're up against, and it's simply this: the more you have, the happier you'll be. All right, now, not new, right? In fact, 4,000 ads a day point you in that direction, right? The more you have, the more you accumulate, the more, the happier we'll be. More money, more stuff, more experiences. The problem is we've all experienced that doesn't work out that well, right? Like, you get more, what's more, it's all relative, then what happens? Then we need more, right? Because someone always has more, and there's always more. I love, like, psychologists talk about this idea that cultural happiness is not increasing at the speed of the accumulation of technology and stuff, which is more now than ever. In fact, in this book called The Progress Paradox, with subtitle How Life Gets Better While People Feel Worse. Okay, now listen to that. How life gets better while people feel worse. Here's what Greg Easterbrook writes about this idea. He says, adjusting for population growth, 10 times as many people in Western nations today suffer from unipolar depression or unremitting bad feelings without a specific cause than they did half a century ago. Americans and Europeans have ever more of everything except what? Except happiness. And we all know, I mean, in the philosophy of, or like the great philosopher Puff Daddy said, "Mo money, mo problems," right? So throw that one in there for you for a minute. That you can quote that. Anyways, like, here's the deal, right? Like, we all know the challenge with this, and And honestly, it moves far beyond happy, right? This is about our identity, that we put our identity in things, and so we work and we work and we work and work and work. And what happens is trying to get more, we just become more busy, right? And pretty self-explanatory, but you follow me. Okay, the second one, let's just go on. The second one is this: the more you do, the more successful you'll be. Okay. In other words, every opportunity is the right opportunity, right? And so the more you do, the more successful you be. And how many of us live our lives trying to make sure that we don't miss out, or that we stay, right? That we keep up with whoever, the Joneses are, right? And so if you have kids, you see this play out, you're like, oh, my kid has to be in this sport, but they also have to do dance, and they have to play the piano, and they also have to be in this art class. And the reason we do all this stuff is because we don't want our kids to miss out. We don't want them to fall behind. And the question is, fall behind what? But what happens is we just keep adding and adding and adding because we think, well, that's where we're going to find success. Now, this isn't just what we do with our kids. This also happens like throughout life, right? For instance, not every job opportunity is the right opportunity for you. And yet, so often what happens, you're like, oh man, this is an opportunity for growth, usually tied to accumulating more or more power, more influence, more whatever. And in the process of whatever that opportunity is, we fail to realize that it may actually put a barrier in our lives. It may cause more stress or more pain or more problems. Now, I don't have a rap quote for that one, so you'll just have to roll with me. But once again, this is more than just about success. This really is about our identity. And Jesus wants to give us a different way. He wants to speak into like what really matters or what we value. Like, what do we put in this circle? And he does so in in his most famous teaching called the Sermon on the Mount. We spent about 3 months on this earlier this year on the Sermon on the Mount, but the Sermon on the Mount is really like this big picture overview of how Jesus says the world works, right? Like what life in his kingdom looks like. And in it, here's what Jesus has to say about what we value. Check this out. Matthew 6, starting with verse 25, he says, "That is why I tell you not to worry about everyday life." Now, the reason he says that is why I tell you is he's just got done telling them a few things that really speak into this. We'll get back there. All right. Now, he says, whether you have enough food and drink or enough clothes to wear, isn't life more than food and your body more than clothing? He says, look at the birds. They don't plant or harvest or store food in barns, for your heavenly Father, he feeds them. And aren't you more, valuable to him than they are? Can all of your worries add a single moment to your life? And that's rhetorical, right? So, and it goes on. He says, and don't worry about, why do you worry about your clothing? Look at the lilies of the field and how they grow. They don't work. They don't make their clothing. And yet Solomon in all of his glory was not dressed as beautifully as they are. And if God cares so wonderfully for the wildflowers that are here today and then thrown into the fire tomorrow, he will certainly care for who? For you. Why do you have so little faith? So don't worry about these things, saying, what will we eat? What will we drink? What will we wear? These things dominate the thoughts of who? Of unbelievers, of people that have not made this decision, have not put their faith in Jesus and his kingdom. Instead, he says this, but your heavenly Father, he knows all of your needs. And so here's the line, right? Seek the kingdom of God above all else and live righteously, and he will give you everything that you need. Live righteously. Let me just simplify that. Seek the kingdom of God above all else. Live like Jesus, right? Live rightly like Jesus, and he will give you everything that you need. Jesus' answer to how we navigate through all this is really, I think, now there are a lot of words that we could describe this, but it's found in this spiritual practice, this spiritual discipline that I would say is simply, we can describe as this: simplify. Simplify. Now, we could say it's about priority. We could say it's about what we value. But I like this word, simplify. I think it's a really powerful word as we think about the complexity and the busyness and the chaos of our lives and why we feel like things are so out of control. I think it comes down to this idea of simplifying. And what Jesus is saying in Matthew chapter 6 is simply this, like, hey, here's what I want you to do. I want you, when you draw that red circle and figure out, like, what are you going to fit in your circle and what's going to be at the center of your life and what's most important and what do I want you to build your life around? Simply this, build it around Jesus and his kingdom. And like when we do that and when we place him in this center, when Jesus is what we value, but and the kingdom is what we value above everything else, when it's, and it's like, hey, this is what's most important to me. What God does is he draws another circle around that circle. It's like, okay, now all this other stuff that you need, like what you need is going to be provided for you. Like it'll all align, but the key to all of it is like what's going to be of most value to you. And you got to simplify. And here's a couple of pushbacks with simplify, right? Like simplification means I look and I go, but look at all this stuff I have to give up, right? And I think that's one of the pushbacks of a life of really pursuing God is we think of all the stuff that, we might be giving up. And we'll talk more about that in just a second. But the other pushback I think is we think simplicity equals like boring or lack of depth, right? Like when we think of things that are simple, we think, oh man, well, this isn't that complicated. And if it's not that complicated, then it's not that deep. But I think that's one of the great misconceptions of simplicity. I think at the heart of simplicity is making space so that the things that we value most, we can have deep, significant, significant, deep understanding of, that we can have time to really focus on what matters most. I'll just tell you, in my life, I've been trying to put this practice of simplicity into my life, and it's amazing how as I do this, like God seems to speak to me more clearly and show me different ways in which maybe before, there's just too much going on to hear his voice, but when I simplify my life and I go, okay, this is what is going to be most important, here's what happens is all of a sudden I hear from God more clearly and I'm more confident in what matters most in my life. And so it really is. Like the question is, how do we get there and how do we really seek his kingdom first? Like that's the question. And I think it's found, there was a part of Matthew chapter 6 that I read earlier, and I love the line. I'm just going to skip right down to the bottom of Matthew 6:30, and it's just these words in bold. Why do you have so little faith, right? Why do you have so little faith? And here's why I think that matters so much. I think the great question that we have to ask ourselves as we think about ruthlessly eliminating hurry from our lives is, and this is, I'm just going to throw it out there. This is a challenge, but I think this is where many of us get hung up at. This is where we never fully experience this, free, this light and free life that Jesus has for us that he mentions, earlier, that we talked about, is we've never answered this question, and that is, will I take Jesus at his word? Right? Like Jesus comes and he offers us this different way of viewing life and approaching life, and like it's different, and we just are stuck in this place where at some point we've got to make a decision. Like, will I take Jesus at his word that this is actually better than this? Like this life is better than what the world has to offer. And I'm just like, let's just be honest. Like that's not an easy. For me to sit up here and say that that's easy is just not true. Like there's this constant battle, right? There's this constant battle going on where I'm like, I want a foot in this life that Jesus has to offer, but I also I just seem to be pulled in this direction, and it's like, oh man, what do I do, right? And the question it really comes down to is like, will I take Jesus at his word that there is, will I believe that there's a better way? Right before this, I mentioned, Jesus said in Matthew 6:25, that's why I tell you, don't worry about your everyday life. I mean, he says that and he goes on and tells us, seek God's kingdom first. Right before that, he lays out a couple laws that, not laws like rules to follow, not laws like, speed limit, but laws like, this is the way the world works. This is the way the world works, and this is the way my kingdom works. He lays out a couple laws that are just so true, like it's just how things work. And it leaves us to this place where we have to ask the question, like, will I take Jesus at his word? Listen to what he says. Listen to what he says in verse 19. He says, don't store up treasures here on earth where moths eat them and rust destroys them and where thieves break in and steal. Store yourselves and store your treasures in heaven where moths and rust cannot destroy and thieves do not break in and steal. And then he says this is the law, right? For wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will be also. And we read that and we know the truth of that, right? Like how many of us have known people that had a whole lot of stuff and then they die and then guess what? They don't have that stuff anymore, right? Like it's no longer there and it's like, okay, I can see that. But honestly, like culture says, right? Like the more you have, the happier you'll be. And so there's this battle going on and the question is like, will I take Jesus at his word? Do I really believe that like there's something better to invest in, and that when I do that, where my treasure is, there my heart will be also, and that Jesus offers something better. He goes on and right after that, and he says this. He says, no one can serve two masters. He says, for you'll hate one and love the other. You'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and be enslaved to money. And once again, Jesus is saying, look, this is just the reality. Like you can't serve two masters. And the question is, will we take Jesus at his word? Like that we can't live here. And it's just not, like we've got to choose and we've got to pick. And so it really does come down to like this question, will I take Jesus at his word? Do I truly believe that there's a better way? And here's what's so amazing about this is we know, because many of us have pursued the other way, right? Many of us are worn out and we're tired and we're angry in our relationships. We're frustrated at what we don't have. We're jealous of what other people have. We're constantly looking to our left and our right to try to compare ourselves from, success and what we have. And so then we work harder and we pursue more and we do all the things. We get busier and we get busier and busier. And we're like, man, I can't do this forever. And many of us have experienced that. Will we trust that Jesus offers something better? And it comes down to, this circle and going, what am I going to place in this circle? What's going to be most valuable to me? So, with all that being said, I told you I was going to give you some application. So here's some application for you as we wrap up. Just a couple of minutes here. The first application, which, like I said, honestly, family, this isn't it's not the content that's the challenge, right? It's the practice. And so I just want to first and foremost say, we're going to pray over this stuff in a minute. And when I do, I want you to just pray for God to give you the strength to do some of this stuff. The other thing with it is, the hardest part is getting started, right? And many times it's like, well, I'm so busy, I don't even know how to do this. So as I tell you what I'm about to tell you, just know, you got to get started somewhere. And so here's where I would start at. The first thing is this: define what really matters. Some of us in this room have never really sat down and said, okay, here's the order of importance in my life. If you're married, you sit down with your spouse. If you have family, you sit down with your family. Whatever that looks like, but you're just going, okay, this is what really matters in my life. Because what really matters in our lives has a huge impact on our time, and it has a huge impact on how we view our possessions, and it has a huge impact on where we place our attention. And for some of us, it's just the beginning point of literally sitting down and saying, we're going to define, right? We're actually going to define what really matters in our lives. We're going to name it because it'll have an impact. And then the second thing is this, the second part of this is it's step one, step two, right? Is begin removing what doesn't align. And I know that seems so easier. Just get rid of it. But listen, maybe it's a small step. Maybe it's one thing for now, but you make a decision that you're going to remove things that don't align. You begin with your possessions. For so many of us, we have so much stuff that requires so much time, and it takes us away from what matters most, right? And what happens is we just keep adding and adding and adding more stuff, and then we have more stuff to take care of, less time we have. I've talked to people before that have, a lake house, and they're like, oh man, all I do is take care of my lake house. I don't actually ever get to go hang out because I have, people that have, bought more property, like all I do is take care, whatever that is. I mean, maybe it's more activity for you. I don't know. But listen, like you begin with possessions. Why do garage sales happen? You add more and more stuff until you come to this breaking point where you're like, holy moly, I've got way too much stuff. And so then you sell it and feel, you feel better and someone else now has too much stuff. So that's what, but we do that with our stuff, right? And so all I would say is you view your stuff and go, man, what is it that's keeping me away from what's most important? Take a step. Start with a closet. I don't know. Start with a room that, I'm going to remove, whatever that may be. Okay, I think it gets more difficult with time because you have garage sales for your stuff. I've never heard of a garage sale for, like, your time, right? And so it doesn't really work like that. But you've got to ask yourself a question, like, what am I spending my time on? I was reading a podcast. I just unzipped my wrong shirt. I got some note cards in here. So anyways, there we go. All right, so I was listening to a podcast this week. I thought, man, this is so great. The person was talking about how, we have a garage sale because we keep adding, and then finally we got to get rid of stuff, but we never have that with our time. And he said, what his wife and him started to do is every year they sit down and they write down on 3x5 note cards everything that occupies their time, their job, sports activities, hobbies, social media, stuff, right? Like whatever. I've only got 4 things going on in my life, I guess. So no, I'm joking. Anyways, yeah, right? Yeah, Kate, help me out here. So anyways, write down the stuff. And then honestly, he said is then I start asking the question, is this a good thing? And then you go, well, yeah, it's all good. And then go, okay, but is this the best thing for my time? And then take it one step further. And I love this because if you allow God to speak into it, here's where he's going to take you. Does God have this for me? Does God have this for me? And if he doesn't have, he said, and here's what we do. We find 2 or 3 things every year that we're like, you know what, this is a really good thing, but we just don't think that God has something better for us. We're going to eliminate that so we can spend more time on what's important. But many of us have never intentionally taken time to do that, all right? So that's our time. We've talked about our possessions. The last piece is what? It's our attention, right? Like what has our attention? Maybe we need to remove some things that have our attention. Listen. There are a lot of things that have our attention that, quite honestly, they just don't matter that much. We dedicate hours and hours and hours to things that just don't matter that much. Guys, I'll pick on you for a minute. Like, listen, some of you have spent more hours studying your fantasy football team and stats than you've focused on your kids over the last 2 months. Stop it, okay? Like, like for real. Like, I mean, and I'm not saying don't play fantasy football. Some of us, you played more video games in the last year than you've spent going out on dates with your wife, right? Like, fill in the blank. You know what? And this isn't a guy thing. Some of us have spent more time on social media than we've spent, we spend more time in a day on social media than we spend on a month really in prayer asking God, what are you saying to me? What are you saying to me? And what am I going to do about it? Like we've allowed our attention to be focused on things that don't really matter that much. I was talking to a good friend of mine and he got rid of, I'm going long, I'm sorry, I'm almost done. I was talking to a good friend of mine and he's like, yeah, we got rid of our TV in our living room last week. And like he had someone say like, you're crazy. And what are you doing that for? And he's like, you know what? Now when we put the kids to bed, like we have time together where we just have our attention on each other. And the question really is, am I going to be willing to remove what doesn't align with what really matters? And it's tough. And I know for some, I just threw some heat at some. I'm sitting in this chair for Like, this isn't us thing. But I just want you to hear that Jesus has something better for you. It's truly better. Andy Stanley says this. He says, what gets our attention determines our direction and ultimately our destination. Or if you would prefer a short version, here it is. Attention determines direction. All right, here's my prayer. We're going to ask God to move in this. Here's the verse. This is about simplicity. Here's the verse. Seek the kingdom of God above all else and live righteously, and he will give you everything that you need. Let's pray. God, search our hearts. Spirit, move. Give us the strength to know how and what to eliminate from our lives so that we can really discover what really matters. God, I think about Paul's words where he says, then, you'll find life that's true, take a hold of life that's truly life. And God, I think for many of us in here, we're worn out, we're extended, we're exhausted, we're stretched beyond capacity. And we're missing the fullness of life that you have to offer. So God, I pray that you give us boldness to acknowledge and surrender some hard things in our lives that we need to hand over to you. God, I pray that you give us boldness to ask tough questions, and more than that we just really seek you. And God, I pray that as we eliminate and we remove things from our lives and we simplify our lives, that you would give us great joy and freedom so that we can just eliminate more. So we can live in such a way that we just get to this place where nothing else really matters except pursuing your kingdom in our lives. And God, that's a freeing and exciting place to be. So God, lead us there. God, use each of us to encourage each other as we walk down this road. And God, we want to do this because of who you are, that you cared about us so much, that you brought about restoration through your son, Jesus. And it's in his name we pray. Amen.
So we're going to have you join us in this last song, so you can go ahead and stand up. But I also want you to consider what helps you focus on these lyrics best. I mean, I know it's very distracting for some of us to try to sing along while also taking in the words. And so do what works for you. Make these words your own, whether that's just reading them to yourself, whether it's closing your eyes and listening, whether you can take that all in by singing with us. But these are beautiful words of surrender and giving our lives over to God. And so do whatever you need to do to connect and make these your own.
I give you my life, I give you my trust, Jesus, for you are my God, and you are enough, Jesus. My heart is yours, my heart is yours. Take it all, my life in your hands. My heart is yours. take it all, take it all. My life in your hands. My heart is yours. My heart is yours. Take it all, take it all. My life in your hands. Take it all, take it all, take it all. My life in your hands.
Well, you can go ahead and have a seat. And I think that the thing that just really stands out to me this morning is that in everything that we're doing, in every decision that we make, we're choosing to put something at the center, right? We're choosing what we value. And the question is, will we choose that thing that we value? Will that be Jesus? Will Jesus be at the center of everything that we do? And here at Movement, we know just how significant it is to celebrate people's stories of really placing Jesus at the center and stories of what it's looked like in their life to really follow Jesus with everything that they are. And honestly, we don't take enough time to celebrate stories like this. So we're going to take a moment right now to just spend some time together celebrating one person's story of what it looks like to find her way to following Jesus. So let's check out this video together.
I'm Allison. Before I knew Jesus, my life was kind of a mess. I was very focused on myself. I was very focused on the world. I was trying to find a lot of my value and my joy and peace from the world. I struggled a lot with anxiety and I just had a lot of really broken relationships, and I was very focused on transactional relationships, what do you want from me? What can I get from you? Stuff like that. And so that was kind of what my life was like before I knew Jesus. It was just kind of very focused on things that didn't give life. But then I met a friend who very much knew Jesus, and she kind of took me in, and it wasn't even I didn't know what was happening, but she just showed me the love of Jesus, and she showed me the joy of knowing Jesus without really having to say hey, I know Jesus, this is why I'm so happy. But she just showed me what that life looked like. And her family kind of took me in and consistently pulled me into this, they just kind of invited me into their life, and I became a part of finding that joy. So I didn't realize that that's what I was drawn to, why I wanted to hang out with her so much, or why I always wanted to talk to her, or why being around her smiling face all day was so great. But that's what I was drawn to, was Jesus working through her. She showed me what it really looks like to follow Jesus by just kind of being an example. Most of the time it was honestly just by observing her, because in the world you see a lot of gossiping, you see a lot of people being really angry, but she was always so different. I just remember watching her interact with people that I struggled to interact with, and the way that she was able to handle that with grace. And I saw a lot of really difficult things in her life, she went through them with hope. So that's when we started actually having conversations about God and faith, and she invited me into a Bible study group, and I got to learn a little bit more about it, and she had gifted me a devotional. But it wasn't just, she could have very easily just been here's a devotional, awesome, bye. But instead she did that and continued to have a relationship with me. So that was really different to see, but also kind of aided in this idea of constant learning about a loving God. What does that look like? Well, she was able to reflect that in our actual relationship that I could see, that was tangible to me in that moment. So that's part of what brought me to Jesus. We're called to make disciples, so the mission is to go and show other people the love of Christ. And you will be different to someone who has never been shown the love of Christ, because it's really different. That's how I came to know Jesus, was by just observing this girl and her family, and that's what I focus on a lot, is trying to connect with people and show them that I care, and just show them that there is a really loving and graceful God, because I didn't know that before. Hello? Hi.
Are you okay?
Yeah, are you? Sorry, is this an okay time?
Yeah, I'm with Sophie.
We were just doing a video about how I came to know Jesus, and it was all about you and the fact that I didn't know about God before I met you, and how, I don't want to cry, how just, I don't know, you and your family, Morgan, just showing me the love of Christ and modeling that for me.
It's just been like so beautiful seeing you really make your faith your own, and just like how quickly you grew. Like, I don't know, just watching your love for the Lord grow, and he's just done amazing things through you, and I know he will continue to. So, love you. Let's talk soon, okay?
Okay, love you too.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.
So when I listen to Allison's story and her story of her relationship with her friend Morgan, and I look at that, I think that what we can take from that is what happens when we slow down and when we decide what's most important and when we place Jesus at the center. I believe that he wants to use each of us in that way. He wants to use us to draw people back to him. And he did that using Morgan in that way in Allison's life. And now he's using Allison in the lives of the people around her to draw them back to him. And I know that he wants to write stories like that in each one of our lives. And when we choose to slow down and be attentive, he's going to show us those people around us that he wants to draw back to him. And so I really believe that that's the invitation. As we leave from this place today, we think about what does it look like to really define what's most important and to place Jesus at the center and to remove those things that are not supposed to be at the center. And I know that in that we're going to be able to celebrate more and more stories just like this. So that's my prayer for you as you leave from this place, and that's what it means when we say to go and be the church. So I pray that as you leave this week, that would be the invitation that you live into, that you'd slow down, be attentive, place Jesus at the center, and movement, go and be the church.